Do Bobby Portis' recent comments mean he has priced himself out of Milwaukee? And what would plan B look like for the Bucks if that's the case? Camille and I explore coming up next on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia, joined as always by Camille Davis. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day each and every day. You, of course, can find my work on the Bucks Radio Network. You can hear Camille on the Locked On NBA show and the Technical Foul podcast as well. And Camille, we start in a similar spot on today's show as we have for most of this offseason, and that is wondering about the future with this team and with a player in the front court specifically, although this time it's not Giannis that we're referring to, it's Bobby Portis. This is a little old, but we had a lot to get through in the lead up to this. But earlier in the week, Bobby Portis appeared on the Run It Back show on FanDuel Sports Network, I think.
Yep.
And was asked a number of things. He weighed in on the Giannis versus Shams debate, the finals and what we're seeing here from the Indiana Pacers, if it was a squandered opportunity in that Game 4 loss, and the big ones that will interest Bucks fans, Giannis's future and his future. Let's just start with this one. We've already mowed this piece of grass quite a bit, but Bobby also reassuring, hey, I just don't see Giannis leaving. And he took it a step further, saying, I honestly think the guy just bleeds green, and referring to, I think he's going to finish his career with the Bucks. So then it comes to Bobby Portis. And okay, if that's the case and he's there, then surely you would want to stay in Milwaukee, right? And it got interesting. I did not take his comments as, well, he's surely gone, but you initially had to raise an eyebrow because it started out, and to be clear, I think we've talked about this previously, Bobby gave a similar answer elsewhere too. But the gist of it was, I took some team-friendly deals, and that's one of the things that gets lost in the shuffle. He definitely did. When the Bucks signed him in the fall of 2020, and then the extension he signed after that, we were all like, whoa, Bobby Portis took that much to stay here. I'm 30 years old now, or going to be 30 years old, and it's come to the point in my career where I got to get paid. So not saying I want to leave Milwaukee, but I would like to be paid to be there. When you hear those comments, does it sway? Well, let's completely start over. Do you think Bobby Portis is going to be in a Bucks uniform next season, even before you heard that?
I've assumed that he would be, right? But as you pointed out, the message that he had in this show was very similar to what he said earlier about just, I want to make sure I get paid this time around. And even makes me think, like, initially when he made the comments and he was talking about Giannis weeks ago, and Giannis commented back on the actual Run It Back page on Instagram. Like, what are you doing? You talking about me, but what are you going to do, Bobby? And seeing their banter made me think of, like, hey, maybe they're both will be back because, they're having like this playful banter with one another, but Bobby continuously making point to say, like, hey, I've taken some discounts. I've taken team-friendly deals. I want to get paid, which sounds a lot like what we're hearing from Nas Reed too in Minnesota, of like, I want to get paid. Now for Bobby and Milwaukee, it does make me a little nervous, just because we've gone over their financial situation this offseason, and we've also both said we think Brook Lopez is gone. If Brook is gone and you have an opportunity to start, like, does that sway Bobby some to be like, okay, I get more opportunity here? Or is it like straight cash, homie, where it's like, this is what I'm here for, this is what I want, and if you can't do it, I'm fine with leaving. And I'm not sure which side that he's on right now, because I would think with playing time, like, that's something that can ease you a bit, but I'm feeling a little nervous about Bobby coming back now. I'm not gonna lie.
So I don't know if it's just hopium or what. I feel like he will be back. And there was an interesting part in the interview too, where he was at any of us that work remotely, you know exactly what the setting was, where Bobby had the blurred out background and pretty plain walls behind him. And they even asked, because he's been on the show before, "Oh, are you traveling? Are you in a different location? We don't see the artwork on the walls." And he just kind of kept it low key of, "No, just got some things to do today, so we're keeping it low key." Which I'm surprised we haven't seen the prompts of Bobby Portis is selling his house and moving. What is this
Right.
for the future? Um, but he mentioned we have had discussions with the Bucks after that comment of "I'd like to be paid." Yeah, we're currently discussing some things with the organization that I wonder if, number one, if Bobby is looking to get paid, if you can, part of these conversations is, look, we obviously want you here.
Right.
We think there's an expanded role, to your point, especially, I don't know if the front office is going to say, "Hey, look, Brooke is probably leaving," but we think there's a good opportunity that your minutes are going to increase. The role that you're going to take on is going to increase even more. You may be our starting big man here alongside Giannis. So we do want to take care of you. We got a lot more flexibility next year when things start to open up a lot more. And there's some other things we'd like to do to build around you and Giannis and everybody on the roster. So what if you do us one more solid here? You opt into that, and then we work out an extension after that. And that's where we can pay you, where it triggers next summer and not this summer.
Yeah, I mean, and I would think at this point too that Bobby Portis and the Bucks have a relationship that is a trustworthy one at this point, given the fact that, as he pointed out, he has taken team-friendly deals throughout his time here in Milwaukee. So knowing that he wants to be paid, if they could strike a balance, like you said, of like, hey, opt in, and we do have you on the back end. There's not more responsibility for you, a bigger role. Like, just do us one more solid, and we got you. And it's then I was be curious, is he willing to do the one more solid? Because as he's
Yeah.
pointed out, like the
I've
age,
already done it twice.
yeah, like I've already done this. Like 2 times is enough. 3 times, I'm out of here. So again, it's like I could see that being a pathway forward, but I still have like some nervousness now around just the Bobby Portis situation of, will he be willing to do that? Will he re-sign Milwaukee if he is trying to get paid, and knowing what the market is for big men this particular free agency class? I could see another team being like, "Hey, like we will throw some money at Bobby Portis, even if it's just a shorter contract, but just throw a little money at him because of the skill set, the offensive skill set he can bring to the table."
Yeah, and, we've talked about the Bucks cap sheet quite a bit. We're, I would assume, only going to talk about that more in the next week or so as well. But we'll brush up on that and why we mentioned, look, opting into the contract and then extending after that is probably best case scenario for the Bucks for sure, but maybe for both parties as well, as Bobby can get some more money then. So we'll dig through the cap and explain why that's the case coming up after the break here on Locked On Bucks. Time to talk to you about our friends over at Car Gurus. If you've been shopping for a car, the feeling should be exciting, not exhausting. But then you factor in confusing prices, hidden fees. It gets overwhelming. That's why Car Gurus is the site to use. They help you cut through all that noise and show you the best deals that are out there with full confidence. There's over 4 million listings. Car Gurus has more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the U.S. They verify dealers, provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second guessing yourself. If you need a deal you can trust, Car Gurus makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. You do it with things like grills, polos, clothing. Now you can do it with cars as well and get those side-by-side comparisons. They even offer price drop alerts, so you know exactly when the best deal is out there for your perfect ride, available at the budget you're looking for. It's no wonder similar web estimated traffic data shows Car Gurus is the #1 most visited car shopping site. Buy or sell your next car today with Car Gurus at cargurus.com. Go to cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. That is cargurus.com, cargurus.com. So the Bucks this summer with 10 players under contract, and those 10 to be clear, include Bobby Portis and Pat Connaughton and Kevin Porter Jr. So 10 allotments, I should say, not under contract, as they have player options. 10 guys. So even if you keep all those names, you're still going to have to add 4 more. It doesn't include Gary Trent Jr., somebody we've never mentioned all that much, Taurean Prince Jr., Jericho Sims, Brooke Lopez not factoring in there as well. So there's your 14. But with those 10 guys, and this is with the assumption Pat Connaughton picks up the player option, Bobby Portis and Kevin Porter Jr. would pick up their player options, that would put you at $167 million. So obviously, I think we can knock 2.5 off of there. I don't see Kevin Porter Jr. picking up the option. The Bobby one is interesting because if he declines that option, then you're all of a sudden down to about $150 million in cap space, assuming both he and KPJ decline their options. The first apron's $195 million. Second apron, which I don't think the Bucks are going to be close to, is $207 million. And then the tax is $187 million. So you're well below the tax level. You're below the salary cap, and you're certainly well below the first apron. The bad part of it is, hey, you still got to find 6 guys to round out your roster. So there is some flexibility this summer, is the point of it. But next summer, and this can change dramatically depending on what happens with Bobby, what happens with KPJ, what happens with AJ Green if you extend him this summer, with guys like Jericho Sims and Taurean Prince. But next summer, right now, the Bucks have $152 million on the books, and the cap's $170 million. Next season, the tax is $206. So there you can see tax level goes up by about $20 million. The first apron level as well, where that is $215, that goes up by $20 million. You got a lot of flexibility next summer. Granted, not a whole lot of guys under contract, but that's where you can look at it and say, we can kick some of that down the road. And if it goes from what it certainly sounds like when Bobby's talking about paid, commensurate to guys in my position, certainly sounds like he's looking for that 13 million figure, the next contract that he signs, to start with a 2, probably. But your point about just the team makeup and the cap sheet, like, one thing too that the Bucks can count on every team in the NBA is just understanding that the salary will grow about that 10% because of the cap smoothing that they did this time with the new TV money. So you can kind of look in the future and be like, okay, I know the cap will rise here. I know that the apron will rise here. And for the Bucks, if they can figure out a way to put together a team this season, that's like the first step to the retool, the redesign of the offense around Giannis, right? We keep saying next summer is when they're going to have a lot more opportunity, and you laid out the cap situation beautifully to, again, point to that year, which again can change quickly. It can all change very quickly depending on what else they do. But to have that flexibility with a better free agent class, kind of like if you can make it through this year, you are putting yourself in a better situation next offseason as well. But to get there, that's going to be the piece this year, because after seeing like what the projection is around Gary Trent Jr.'s contract, with the board projections from John Hollinger on The Athletic, seeing Kevin Porter Jr. wanting more money, hearing that Bobby Portis wants more money, a lot of the guys who in my mind I've been like, if you can bring them back, you're off to a really good start in this retool. Now it's kind of like, well, we'll see how it looks as free agency opens and we can actually start hearing figures and what these players are thinking about, because it looks a lot different if you lose Brooke and Bobby in this offseason, because there's already I'm like, hey, Tyler Smith, the Bucks are going to need some minutes from you in 25, 26. I would hate for the Bucks to really need Tyler Smith minutes in 25, 26 if you lose both Bobby and Brooke along the way. I think we're still kind of coming to grips with the board projections figure that John Hollinger put together for KPJ. So if that is in fact the figure that he is going to fetch this offseason, then I'll be the first to say I was wrong. Frank was wrong. I think you were wrong, Camille. And there's some victory laps that are to be taken out there. But yeah, those are the things of anything you can do to give you some more wiggle room this summer and say, look, down the road is when these things open up for us. And these are pieces that we know that fit around Giannis. Those are the things that we'll slot in and say, okay, we'll bite that bullet and we'll pay that much once we open up even more cap space here. But that's going to be one of the bigger questions for the Bucks. And I do also wonder if, let's say, Brook Lopez gets an offer early in free agency, is one of the first to leave here. Steven Adams just getting $13 million. I know he's younger, but I think that's the range that Brook Lopez is going to be looking at and is very likely to get. Does that increase the figure you're willing to pay Bobby Portis? Does that raise your walkaway price if you know we haven't heard much, and I would assume that to be the Bucks feel pretty confident they can and will retain Jericho Sims, but Jericho Sims and Tyler Smith are not your starters, right? And they're not ready to assume that role yet alongside Giannis. Does that then turn you to say, we really wanted to keep Bobby around 17 million, somewhere around there? He wants 22. All right, fine. We'll do it because we got no other options.
Honestly, I do think it increases that number. I'm not sure it's a $5 million increase, like the example, but it's just an example. But I do think that part is part of the calculus of sometimes in free agency, when you strike out in certain ways or you're looking at the board and it's not falling the way that you thought it was, sometimes then you do have to overpay, quote unquote, to get what it is that you feel like you need. And if Brook Lopez leaves and Bobby's looking at the market and he's like, I can get this elsewhere, like there has to be a walkaway number for sure, like something that you're firm on, like we can't go over this. But I think that number does increase if you know Brook Lopez is not coming back, because you do. We've pointed to the numbers of last season being one of the most productive ones for Bobby and Giannis sharing the court. Like there's some chemistry in there that you can trust in the rebounding, the scoring from Bobby Portis. The defense has been a question mark for him for some time, but I think last season he played decently well on defense. So yeah, I think you have to increase that number. If Brook is the first one out the door, I mean, you're looking at what else you have on the market and on the board. And I guess it also depends too on what they're seeing from Tyler Smith. Again, I don't want to jump into his second year and being like, hey man, like we need you 30 minutes a night immediately. But do want more Tyler Smith. And again, having a vet like Bobby too around him as he's continuing to develop, I think will be a good sign for them. So ultimately, yes, you increase that number a bit, I think, if you know Brook is leaving.
So we mentioned the John Hollinger board system as it pertains to Kevin Porter Jr. It's pretty apt to apply it here as well, as his power forwards list is also out. So where does he have Bobby Portis slotted in? Are we in for a rude awakening, just like it was with KPJ? We'll reveal that figure coming up next on Locked On Bucks. There's nothing like stepping into your own outdoor space and feeling like you've escaped to a personal oasis. If you're wanting to update your patio this season, Wayfair has made it so easy to turn it into that space that feels like yours, comfortable, stylish, and ready for the summer. They have everything you need to level up your outdoor space, whether it be conversation sets, outdoor bars, fire pits, hot tubs, gazebos, and even the perfect string lights to set the vibe out there in that space. It's like giving your backyard that outdoor resort feel without the price tag that comes with it. If you're looking for the right style, maybe clean and modern, you'll love being able to filter out to find exactly what you're looking for that fits that look in your space and budget. They offer fast, free, and hassle-free delivery, even with the larger items. And now when you're hosting your friends or just unwinding with a book, it genuinely feels like you're at your own private retreat. Don't wait. Make your outdoor space your dream oasis today with Wayfair and enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop a huge selection of outdoor goods. That is wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Kind of buried the lead here, Camille. That's my bad. But the power forward rankings are out from John Hollinger as well. And I was curious Would he slot Bobby in as a power forward or as a big because of his versatility? So, number one on his power forward list is LeBron James at
Yeah.
52.7 million is the figure he came up with there. Number two, and maybe this will give you an idea of what we're looking at here. Number two, he has Julius Randle. What would you guess the figure is there?
I would guess maybe like 31 million, somewhere in that range.
You're in the ballpark. $26.8 million. So I think you see that and you suddenly feel like, okay, this might break our way here. Number three on the list is a name that has come up here before. That is Santi Aldama. He has Santi Aldama slotted at $25.6 million. Here's the one that I think is going to be very polarizing among Bucks fans.
Okay.
I'll just say this. Bobby Portis, he has listed as number 5. Number 4. I'm not going to ask you to guess who it is and like all the list of players that are out there that you don't have in front of you. But number 4 is John Collins, who has a player option. There are some components to their game that are comparable, but I mean, I think certainly if you surveyed Bucks fans, they would say Bobby Portis is better than John Collins. I think 2-3 years ago, most of the league would have said John Collins. I think the results in Utah were a little mixed. He is younger than Bobby by about 2 to 3 years. But I think they're in the same zone.
Yeah.
It's got John Collins at $20.4 million. So then tier number 3, and he only has, to be clear, I didn't count up how many tiers there are, but there's only one name in that tier 1 of max guys. That was LeBron.
Just LeBron.
Tier 2 in the more than the mid-level but less than the max was Julius Randle, Santi Aldama, and John Collins. And then leading tier 3 is Bobby Portis. In tier 3, he has as mid-level guys. So the figure he has for Bobby Portis is basically just over the mid-level at $15 million, making what, 13.5 right now, and that's the final year of his player option. If that's the figure, I think the Bucks, you say, let's get this done now. Yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. Get that done right away. And with that, like, maybe it is a situation like you mentioned where, hey, opt in on the player option. We know it's 13. You're looking for, let's say, maybe he's looking for 16, 17, something like that. And then you can work it out on that extension part of it. Like, even if you're a Bucks fan who's listened to that and you're like, man, Bobby Portis, I'm ready to get off this ride. Woo, woo, woo. If they are able to strike that deal, then at least if you have a tradable contract on your books. And again, I think Bobby is a very important piece. And I think he's going to be needed for the Bucks' upcoming season. But if things break a certain way, something becomes available, to be able to have Bobby Portis making 15, 16 million annually, like that's a good contract to have on your books as well.
Not a great class here in terms of the free agents. I mean, The other one that I say, okay, I think I'd be interested in this. If things break down and Bobby Portis moves on, and you would assume it's certainly going to be less money, especially recent reporting that there's suddenly less and less optimism that this team is going to be able to retain this player for the figure they wanted. Gerson Yabusele. John Hollinger has him slotted in at about half of the mid-level. Philadelphia hoped to retain him for the veteran minimum, and I believe that's basically all they can comfortably offer with where they are with some other guys on the roster. But that's, to me, the guy that you would say, if we miss out on Bobby and we're assuming Brooke is gone and we need something, we can get him cheaper and we can make that a contract that's, a 2+1 or something where it's multiple years. And not only are you, getting value, you would assume, but it's also, again, the important part there, a tradable deal that you have down the road.
Yeah. And he's around the same age as Bobby, if I remember correctly. So you're not necessarily getting younger there, but you're getting a guy who has a motor, who has a big motor, who has shown that he can stretch the floor a little bit, a little undersized, but big motor. So, and I think that's part of what we've been talking about, what you want to see around Giannis too, is guys who are going to be able to play fast, knock down the ball. And again, not as consistent of a shooter as a Bobby Portis, but he's someone who gives you a lot and it'll be at a cheaper price point. So like, that's definitely somebody, if you do strike out on the Bobby Portis wagon, to keep an eye on. But I do think he's going to be someone who's popular amongst NBA teams this offseason.
He is, I believe, just a year younger than Bobby. I mean, it gets lost in the shuffle because of the years that he played overseas. But yeah, he's around the same age. Another name that we didn't spend much time on is because it's also a player option, Dorian Finney-Smith. He's what, 2 years older than Bobby?
Yeah,
and I still, as strange as it is to say, I think at this point, I'd rather pay a guy like Bobby than I would Dorian Finney-Smith, because right now there's more value as a defender from Dorian Finney-Smith, but he's 2 years older. We've already gone over, I think you need to move into the era where Giannis is the oldest player on your team. And that wouldn't be the case with him. And the defense isn't always going to hold up to the level that you need it to. Whereas with Bobby, not to say, hey, he's a terrible defender, so who cares? But you're paying for that offense, basically. And with Bobby's game, that's something that is going to age and sustainable. So for me, if I had a choice between the two, I would actually rather retain Bobby Portis and pay to keep him.
Yeah.
But look, if you miss out, that's an interesting target there as well. As we start to wrap here, two things to touch on. I expect next week to be very, very crazy across the board. Maybe even this weekend. The finals, we get a game 7 now on Sunday, but maybe even you hear some things develop over the weekend on the Kevin Durant front. I don't know if you caught, maybe Shams Charania tipped his hand with his reaction when who was it on the pregame panel? Shumpert, yeah, mentioned the Spurs being a pretty good fit, he thinks, and then Shams kind of gave a look of, oh, are you telling me this deal is already done and we're about to hear about it next week? But leading into the draft, it is going to be absolutely crazy, I think, in terms of trades and everything else. And then the rumors that come out with free agency. We, of course, have a game 7 as well on Sunday night. But really quickly, and we'll spend some more time on this next week, the shooting guard rankings are out as well from John Hollinger. And there is certainly a very, very big name for the Bucks on that list. We said KPJ was what, 6, 7?
16 or something like that
on his rankings? Yeah. But where do you think Gary Trent Jr. ranks?
He's probably like at least tier 2 guy. Yeah, I think he's tier 2, not the max, but more than MLE. Where are they putting him at, like 24, 25?
Okay. So he is number 7 on his list, which kind of goes hand in hand with what we've said all offseason of, like, look, you look at the guys that are out there. Cam Thomas is going to have a bigger market than him. Malik Beasley is going to have a bigger market than him. Nickeil Alexander-Walker, a big name out there. Quentin Grimes is a guy. Karis LeVert, John Hollinger has in front of Gary Trent Jr. as well. But he does have Gary Trent Jr. slotted in for the full mid-level exception. So I still feel like, and especially if you get the vibes, KPJ is way out of our price range. That's another one where you just bite the bullet and you say, look, you're our starting 2 guard. We've had this revolving door of 2 guards through the years, but you're the best that we have found in terms of your two-way play. You're still very young. That's a contract that's palatable. Fine. If there's nothing else out there for us to combine this with, we're going to bite the bullet and we'll pay you the full mid-level.
Yeah, I could see that happening for them if it goes that way, where, like you said, Kevin Porter Jr. is going to be asking for a little bit too much. Like, the ideal situation, of course, is for them to be able to split that up to pay both Gary Trent Jr. and Kevin Porter Jr., bring them both back into the fold. But we'll have to see how reasonable that is. And if you have to pick one or the other, I think Gary Trent Jr. is the guy that you would go with. Again, ideally, you would want them both back. And I think that needs to be, like, ideally, you want them both. But if you only go with one, I think Gary Trent Jr. is that guy.
I would agree, and we didn't even get into the other name out there, and Ryan Rollins. So we'll get into that conversation early next week on the 2-guard view for the Bucks. But as we wrap here, how surprised are you this series is going 7?
I'm a little surprised, but ultimately, when I think about it, not super surprised. Like, this Pacers team has shown that they are a special team, a good team, a deep team, and you can never count them out. So when they're backwards against the wall in Game 6, I thought that the Thunder could go in there and put it all to rest, walk out there champs. But this Pacers team, again, Halliburton didn't look really hampered in this game as he did when he got injured initially in Game 5. So Game 7s are fun. A random role player can end your season in a Game 7. So we'll see how that one shakes out.
I told you before the game, I didn't think the Pacers would win. I picked the Pacers to win the series before the series started, but I thought the Halliburton injury would just be too much for them to overcome, and I was wrong, thankfully. So we get a Game 7. It's hard to believe, first Game 7 since that memorable 2016 one between the Warriors and the Cavs. And I don't want to get too hyperbolic, but by the numbers, this has been one of the better series in the finals we have seen in quite some time. Even the point differential is around 20 in this series, so, or less than that. It's
Less.
6 or 7 or something. So we may end up with an even point differential in this series if the Pacers win it. But we get that Game 7 on Sunday night, and yeah, we'll see. I think we're all looking forward to a Game 7 finally for the first time in a decade now. Absolutely. In the NBA Finals, and what that means for this Indiana team and the league blueprint as a whole. We should also throw this out there. It's time once again to put together a mailbag. So leave your questions in the comments. You can tweet them at Camille and myself. We'll put out the email address as well, but we're going to start pulling together your questions and bring in Frank to knock those out in the mailbag show in probably a couple weeks here. Once we get past the draft and then into the first weekend of free agency, we'll work on it at that point. But start sending in your questions now, and we'll lump in Frank there to share his thoughts as well. That'll do it for today on Locked on Bucks. Stay cool with the heat wave that is about to hit Milwaukee, and maybe we'll run into some of you at Summerfest as well this weekend. You were there last night, Camille. Yeah. I think I'm going to be there tonight, so be on the lookout for that. For Camille, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again next week on Locked on Bucks.